going to start off by inviting Dr. Abidemi Babalola and Dr. Kingsley Daraojimba to speak, as we heard before, on ancient technological innovations in Africa. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Suraj, for the introduction. And I would like to thank again Cambridge Africa for organizing this year conference, and we are honored to be here. This is a joint presentation by myself and a colleague, Dr. Daraojimba. So he has sent me to do this. So if I misspeak, blame him. And he's here to answer your question. Just direct all your question at him, not me. So I'm just his forebearer. Thank you so much. So we'll be talking about the idea of technological innovation in Africa, looking, a little bit, taking you backward, maybe some hundred of years back, and to see what and how African has been responding to innovation and what is considered and not considered as being innovation in Africa. And then this actually dovetails with our project, that has been funded by Cambridge Africa. I have been working on the glass technology in southwestern part of Nigeria, and Kingsley is an environmental archaeologist who has been working on the foodways and the paleo-environmental reconstruction. Both of our projects have actually benefited from Cambridge Africa generosity, to continue our work. So as I proceed, while preparing for this talk, we did a little bit search on the Africa online, and most of what we see, of course, is no more news. What is on Africa, on the news about Africa is all about starvation, it's all about war, it's all about, how, European country, how China and how other Western world could kind of take over African economy and, of course, invest in Africa, not necessarily for Africans themselves, but, of course, for them to make more profit. That is everywhere, and we can never get tired of seeing that. But the question is, this image of Africa being non-inventive, not kind of non-creative, is actually been going on for quite a while. It's been going on for quite a while, and that draws me to 18th century philosopher, a Scottish philosopher, and also a writer and historian who writes about Africa. And of course, he talks, very badly about Africa not being able to create anything. No form of art, no form of science, no form of creativity in Africa. And also, we have a lot of such a write-up in the 18th century from a lot of people talking about blacks being failed to demonstrate any appreciation of art or inventive abilities. And of course, it's no more news. Up to the 20th century, we still have this kind of notion about African being non-inventive, Africa not being part of history, still going around even by, Oxford professor, like even, the top people you think that they should know better. They still kind of paddling this type of a narrative around until in the 20th century. But what was the response of African intellectuals, during the pre-independence in Africa? It wasn't as if Africans were just sitting there taking all these sort of blows and stuff. There was a lot of resistance, through writing, researches, and throwing out their ideas about what Africans, in order to demonstrate what Africans have done in the past and how they have contributed to global technological and scientific development. So we have the work of Sheikh Anta Diop, who was, rubbished, at the global stage, has been nothing, because he put forward this idea of ancient Egypt being the kind of, innovation of, he call it a Negro civilization, that ancient Egyptian is a product of Negro civilization, but everybody kind of throw that idea away. However, the point I'm making here is that people like Sheikh Anta Diop and so many other people after him kind of pushing up the idea, trying to demonstrate that African had, not even historically, African had invented a lot of stuff, and they are still continue to invent, as we see in other presentations today. And of course, we have case study works like the work of Gloria Thomas Emeagwali, who also shows how different form of technologies in Africa. And I'm particularly impressed with Mavunga's recently published book on the what do science, technology, and innovation means from Africa. In this book, I mean, of course, almost every page you open to has a very beautiful narrative about innovation, what we conceive to be innovation, and why innovation is kind of politicized when it comes to Africa. I have a very favorite quote there, which is, quote, "The narrative of victimhood alone will not be enough. The generation of our children, the African millennials, we want to see signposts of creativity. We have seen stories of slavery, colonialism, apartheid, poverty, war, and disease associated with the Black existence. Where are laughter, joy, happiness, creativity, means-making, and resilience in African story? We have invested in showing how cruel people have been and forgotten how resilient, resourceful, and creative we have been in spite of it all. This actually challenges all of us. Like, okay, wait a little. Why do we always have to continue this narrative of slavery, servitude, poverty in Africa when there are other things that our ancestors, let me use the word, have actually achieved in the time past? And like, how do we understand innovation in the present by stepping back and using some kind of a deep historical past perspective? And I believe this should be the story of Africa. What are the means making? How do we read that from? Because I mean, like in the start, when you open the news, this is not. You don't read about means making. Of course, there is a section on the CNN about is the African Voice. Also, they call it, where they bring up people doing great stuff in Africa, and of course, but that is not what you see in most of television, and of course, even how much is dedicated to that type of news, even in CNN, is questionable. So, but this quote particularly challenged me to step back a little bit, and from that point, since I read the book, I made a vow to myself that I'm only going to paddle the great story, history of African past, not the one that, of course, everybody is having one challenge or the other, but at least there is time for us to start showing that positive side of Africa. So the second half of the talk, I will just flip through some kind of evidence of African innovation and invention across the continent. So first, Dave Killick published this article, Invention and Innovation in African Iron Smelting Technology, I think 2015, where he argues that most of the time people misunderstand innovation from invention. Of course, I disagree with him in some point. However, what he tries to make, the point he's trying to make is that when you look at the technology of iron smelting in Africa, there is actually a lot of innovations, new stuff that were introduced in terms of how the furnaces were structured, and the way these furnaces were structured were actually a kind of reflect how adaptive Africans were in terms of constructing this furnace and to carry out smelting. And he particularly points at the Mafian natural drift furnace from the Mandira Mountains of North Cameroon, which is a very good example for this type of innovation in iron smelting. This furnace has just one single two-air pipe, which is the air pipe through which they blow air into the furnace. And this two-air pipe is actually inserted vertically rather than horizontally in many other furnaces. And they blow air from the top into the furnace, and then the gas goes through kind of a hole on the ground. So these furnaces produce cast iron, steel, and wrought iron simultaneously, and all are solidified within the furnace. And then later they take this out and they separate each different type of material from this furnace. So these are some, Kingsley argues that this type of smelting technology does not exist anywhere else in the world, even going as far back as you can go, that is only peculiar to this, sub-Saharan Africa. And what you see in how furnace technology also changes has to do with adaptation to the, unique environment in each of African continents. These are from Igboukwu in southeastern Nigeria, which archaeological excavation at Igboukwu site has revealed significant technological advancements associated to the ancient Igbo community, dated back to between 9th and the 12th century AD. About 75 kilograms of copper alloy objects were excavated from this site in southeastern part of Nigeria. These objects are intricately and lavishly decorated. As you can see from the picture, there are quite a lot of them, different kind, different form, different motif. But the interesting thing about, of course, in the past, there has been a lot of debate about, that was in the 60s, 70s and 80s, a lot of debate about if this, so to speak, Igbo civilization really represents ancient Igbo community. There's a lot of debate about that. Were they made by Igbos themselves, or they were kind of influenced by external kind of people or people from somewhere else? Of course, that is already put to rest now because of a lot of work has been done. And also there's been a lot of debate about the chronology, the date of this site. The argument was that, these are too beautiful to have been made in the 19th century by black people. Maybe they were made in 15th century, and the dating kind of is wrong, and thanks to Cambridge Africa, recently myself and Kingsley did another 3 set of dates from the Cambridge Africa founded, and we have the same. In fact, we push it back to about 8th century, I think late 8th century to up to 13th century. So we know that this technology is actually Igbo, is African. And another unique thing about the production of this copper alloy material in Igboukwu is that they were able to devise different techniques of production, working with copper and also with copper alloyed, alloyed with tin and zinc, because copper is malleable. They invented different technique, of hammering and twisting. So every object made from pure copper are mostly through hammering and twisting. And objects made with copper alloy are mostly through casting, so they were able to, differentiate this type of different techniques, and they use it in the production of this object. And then I will go to Great Zimbabwe World City, and this is kind of a stone wall, and like the debate about Igboukwu, this also has been debated by early Europeans that, of course, this cannot be made by Africans. These are definitely not Africans. So I think this was constructed and used between 11th and the 15th century AD in the called Great Zimbabwe. It's about 11 meters high, and they're about 250 meters kind of, spread in long or in circumference, whatever you call it. But what is significant about the Great Zimbabwe, it also has to do with the construction technique. These were made from dry stone slabs without mortar. They were carefully put together to make this type of huge, imposing architectural design from about 11th century to about 15th century. And of course, there has been a lot of write-up about it. And the work of Shadrach Shirikuri just newly published a book on the Great Zimbabwe, something sophisticated, something historical past, or something like that, actually throws a lot of light on how this was built and how it was used. So now we know that this was actually built by Africans and used by Africans as well. I will rush through the rest. So I also have this ancient gold processing from Nsukka in Mali. Nsukka is in northern Mali and was one of the very important trading centers from around the 8th through 15th century. Arab travelers really refer to Nsukka as a city like Mecca because of its glory, because of its glamour at the time. So that's why it's called Nsukka Mecca, a place like Mecca. And archaeological evidence has shown that there was pointed at production of blank gold coins at Nsukka. And this gold, in the process of gold processing at Nsukka, they use glass as flux to facilitate the gold melting. And that is a kind of technique that is not known anywhere else till today, using glass in the processing of gold as well. And then, how much time do I have? 1 minute, okay. All right, I'll blast through this. So my work in Ife in southwestern part of Nigeria has also pointed at local indigenous glass making in Ile-Ife. At this site in Ile-Ife, we have recovered thousands of glass beads, thousands of crucible fragments with glass inlay on the inside. And this site is dated to from 11th century through 15th century. Again, from this site, we have been able to identify two chemical group of glass, those with high lime high alumina, that's those one here, and those with low lime high alumina. So now we know that those with high lime alumina, I should say this very quickly, that in the study of glass, study of glass technology, the idea in Africa is that the first thing that comes to mind is, where is the source of the glass? Where was it coming from? And in this case, we asked that question, where was it coming from? And we were disappointed that this glass was actually not coming from anywhere. It was locally made with very different recipe that we do not see from other parts of the world. And the here is just to show the difference between, these are the glass from late Bronze Age Egypt and the Roman world, and these are the glass from Ife. You can see the stark difference in terms of the composition of the rubidium versus potash, and here strontium versus rubidium as well. And with this, in one of my articles, I've actually argued that this actually represents creativity, improvisation, and also innovation, because this is the type of very new glass that is not known from anywhere of the world. And argue that glass, rather than the idea that glass was made in just one region of the world and they spread all over, I argue that glass was actually made regionally. It depends on what you have in your region, and of course there's a lot of discussion about how environment will have played significant role in this. So what role did the environment play in sustaining ancient innovation? Of course, we know environment played very significant role in this, because of course, it's one thing for the stuff to be available in the environment. It's another thing for the people to harness it, to put it to use, and then make good stuff out of it. So in line with this, myself and Kingsley, we are working on this collaborative project, looking at the social and technological complexity in Buruku from a paleo-environmental perspective. And what we're interested in doing here is to look at how the people kind of impacted the environment and how they were able to source for, of course, food materials, and what type of innovation can we also see in terms of food processing and material acquisition. And in line with that, and also in connection with our Cambridge Africa project, we had this field work in January of 2001, and we've collected quite a number of soil samples for us to process, to understand the soil morphology, for us to be able to understand the dietary pattern of the people, and understand perhaps how they process their food. And in line with that, we also collaborated with the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, and we helped them in putting up this laboratory, which actually is going to be the second kind of archaeological science laboratory in Nigeria and the first in the eastern Nigeria. Thank you so much. That's it. Thank you.
No problem.